Welcome to Codex History of Video Games. My name is Tyler Osby.
And I'm Mike Coletta.
And this week, we are going to continue our Half-Life coverage, which is led by Mike here, with some Half-Life mods. Now, the modding scene for Half-Life was like right at the right time for mods, wasn't it, Mike?
Oh, yeah, and it was absolutely bananas. So here's kind of how today's going to work. I'm going to do a lot of the mods that we don't know first, just because I think it's important to see like how creative people were with this, because there's some pretty cool stuff in these.
Yeah, this is like the early days of indie games, because like a lot of it's easier to make games now because a lot of like tools to make games are free and they offer really good licensing things. But back in like the late 90s, early 2000s, if you wanted to make your own game and you didn't want to literally start from scratch, your best bet was to make a mod for an already existing game. So you could take what Valve had done with Half-Life and just sort of add on to it and like swap some things out and change things, and you could make your own game. So that's what a lot of like amateur game developers would do, is make mods. And so we end up with a whole bunch of mods.
Yeah, if you even look at Valve, like Valve took the Quake engine, totally changed it, and then made a game. So they, in a way, like modded the Quake engine to make their game.
Yeah, a little bit. They did it in an official kind of like paid money to license the engine way.
Yeah.
But the idea is very similar. Yeah.
So big discrepancy here. We are only going to be talking about mods that come out on the Gold Source engine. We're still in Half-Life 1 days, everyone. I know it's taken a while, but I want to be thorough. And we're going to start with single player mods. And pretty much, I'm just going to tell you what the title is and what it was as a game. I'm not really going to dive into dates or how it was developed, mostly because that information is just not on the internet.
It's all 20 years old.
Yeah, I found a lot of this stuff. Like my list of these came from the fandom wiki of Half-Life, because it's the only place I could find that listed these mods. And I kind of cut some of them out because they weren't really relevant, or they just simply, I clicked on a link and it was just dead and doesn't exist anymore. And I'm like, well, I'm not going to do this one. But you can find most of these on ModDB if you're interested in looking at them. And the other thing is, my mistake here was thinking, oh, there couldn't be like a lot of single player mods. It's probably a lot of multiplayer mods. And I was completely wrong in thinking that. It is the exact opposite. There are a ton of single player mods, because it turns out it's way easier to make a single player game than it is to make a multiplayer game. So at least with Gold Source, I think it's safe to say that. Am I speaking out of turn, you think, Tyler? I don't think so.
I know. I think that's probably accurate. I mean, usually I can imagine, well, single player games were much more popular at the time too. So like if you had an idea and you're like, I want to make this game, you could make a single player version of it. Multiplayer mods, like they take a long time because you got to balance them, and I don't know, I want to say more work, but it's different work that's maybe not quite as fun as making like telling a story,
Yeah, and we're going to get into multiplayer mods after this, and then we're going to get into the mods that were specifically taken or created and then licensed by Valve. And that's how we're going to end with these big ones.
Yeah, that's a cool story.
One big relevant missing game, and that's because I'll explain how we're going to do this at the end of this episode. So the first single player mod is called Half-Life Absolute Redemption. And this one's cool because fans just decided to pretend what happened between Half-Life 1 and 2. They just decided to say, this is what we think happened. So essentially, you're just working for the G-Man in this game. So you go to Zen and you do stuff for the G-Man. Like, you're essentially like an employee of the G-Man in Absolute Redemption. Yeah, pretty cool game. So that was it. See how fast these are going to go? Okay. The next one is called Life's End. And this is a lot like Blue Shift, as in that you play someone that works at Black Mesa. And this is the description on the ModDB website. You ready? Okay, here it goes. Quote, in Life's End, you play as Luther Johnson, late to work on what will be the worst day of your life, because Luther works at Black Mesa.
Oh my gosh. There's so many. I feel like you could just tell lots of different stories of different perspectives of people working at Black Mesa during all of this stuff. Like, that's really interesting.
Oh boy, you can. And that's not going to be the last one that happens like this. So the next one is completely different, though. This is completely separate. This game is called Afraid of Monsters, and this is a straight up horror game that will use the Gold Source engine. And essentially, you play as this guy named David Leatherhoff, and you are on drugs. You're addicted to drugs, and then the drugs cause you to have crazy hallucinations, but you don't know what's real and what's not real, and you have to shoot your way out of it, just like in first person shooters. So
Yeah.
it's a horror version of using the gold source engine. Whereas I think Half-Life can be considered a horror game to some because there are like jump scares in it with head crabs and vents and all that jazz. But I really think this went like full on, like you're at like a hospital at one point, a scary hospital. Things are bad when you're in a scary hospital. That's pretty much how horror works, I think. And I think the zombies, because this was a time, when zombies were the in thing. Speaking of other employees at Black Mesa, this is amazing. And I think this was one of the more popular mods. It's called Azure Sheep, and it's essentially Blue Shift, but at the same time, it's a parody of Blue Shift. So your character is named Just Barney. That's your name. And you have to go save your love, Kate, who's another security guard at Black Mesa while things are going on. And at one point, you get Kate, spoilers, on this mod that came out 20 years ago. And Kate can help you as like a companion, kind of like the NPCs do in Half-Life original, where
that's cool.
Yeah, or Opposing Force or Blue Shift, which is pretty neat. Half-Life Black Ops, same storyline as like Opposing Force or Blue Shift, except this time you're playing one of the members of the Black Ops squad that's at Black Mesa.
Isn't that what Opposing Force is?
Well, Opposing Force, you're a Marine.
Oh, okay.
And this one, you play as the Black Ops enemies that are like the guys that dress in all black. And actually, in the first Half-Life, they're all women that are Black Ops. And then in Opposing Force, they're women and men. Yeah. So that the character model's changed. One cool thing about this, and this isn't the only game that does this, this game was homebrew ported to the Sega Dreamcast. And I guess this was
cool.
kind of a common thing for some of these mods. Like, it's going to happen more with the mods we talk about at the end of this list. But people made their own homebrew copies that played on Dreamcast. And apparently, I think they played all right. So
interesting. I wonder if they're made from scratch or if they're built off of the Half-Life that never came out for the Dreamcast. Because I can imagine, like, the mod that you made for PC probably working maybe okay without much modification on the Dreamcast version, and then you just package it all together,
Yeah, I think so. That's got to be it.
That must be how they did it. That would be the way to do it if you're going to do it.
All right.
If anybody knows, let us know.
Yeah, please let us know. I know nothing about software engineering, so I think if you could email us and let us know, that'd be great. The next game is completely goofy, and I love it. It's called Christmas Life, and you just play a snowman. You're a snowman in a snowy world. It looks like a lot of platforming. I didn't see any shooting. It just seems like you're a snowman kind of traversing your way through this Christmas land, which seemed kind of funny. I don't even know if it's like single player or if there's a story or if you're just a snowman, which makes it even better. The next one is called Half-Life Before. And this involves you being on the early team of like explorer scientists that first go through the teleporters into Zen.
Ooh.
Which is pretty cool. But you end up at like a parallel dimension that's kind of like between Zen and our world or something. And from the footage I saw in the trailer, it's like you're on a giant shipping like ship, essentially like a shipping freighter. And you're fighting like head crabs and also other aliens. And it's pretty crazy, but it looks pretty cool. Also a really cool idea for a game. Like, I think a Half-Life prequel would be really cool.
Yeah.
So Half-Life Echoes, this game is pretty interesting because you play as a scientist named Subject 12 and his perspective of the Black Mesa incident. What makes this game interesting, though, is it came out after Half-Life 2, so it kind of is like a fan-made way of closing the plot threads that were opened up since we never got a Half-Life 3 after those two episodes. So,
whoa, but it's a gold source game.
It's a gold source game, and the thing about it is it came out in 2018.
That's pretty new.
Yeah, and the Mr. G Nang, or Nang, just G, I don't know how you pronounce the name. That's who developed it. This is one of the few times I could find the developer's name. Like, so many people aren't crediting themselves for making these.
Yeah.
Credit yourself. Be good to yourself. Okay. This next one is called Half-Life Emission, and this mod tells you exactly what happened after the credits rolled on Half-Life Decay. That's right. You play as those two scientists again, and it's more co-op fun. That's great.
Cool.
This is one of the games that I decided to include because it gave some love to Half-Life Decay, but I couldn't find any files to download, so I think this mod is pretty much dead. But I wanted to mention it anyway. Usually I didn't mention the dead ones, but this one I was like, it was covering Half-Life Decay. That's pretty cool to me. Half-Life Visitors. So this game goes more into like a government cover-up mystery story. about an author who worked at Black Mesa that wrote a book on Black Mesa and then mysteriously disappeared, and then you play as the author after the events. Ooh, yeah. It seems kind of more like spy, mystery, thrillery, which is pretty
That sounds
neat.
exciting.
Yeah, like that's what's crazy about all these mods is people just thought of this stuff and were like, I'm going to put it in here because you make it so easy. Like, I wish more games did this. This is so cool to me. Although now, like you said, we have indie games, which is probably what filled that void, but still, this is really cool. And also that Valve didn't get upset about any of this.
Yeah, no, they encouraged it. They loved it. And as we'll talk about later, they really encouraged it.
Yeah. So the next game is called Half-Life Zero, and you play as Gerald Freeman.
Related?
I don't know, but this guy is definitely a construction worker, specifically a demolitions foreman at the Black Mesa military installation. And while you're building Black Mesa, craziness ensues. That's how I described it. That's how I summed it up for you. Okay. The next one is called Half-Life Zombie Edition, and you get to play as a head crab, which I think just sums up how cool that is. That should be that. I really wish this was kind of a thing you could do in later Half-Life games. Just play as a head.
That does sound cool.
You play as a head crab, and then you later turn into a zombie. It's like you're a Pokemon evolving in the Half-Life world. It's beautiful. Yeah, I said it sounds like a real coming-of-age story is how I would describe it. This one is actually something that I didn't even know existed. So apparently in the first Half-Life, the training simulator is called it's called the Hazard Course. It's like the tutorial. Mm-hmm. I never played it. Someone made Hazardous Course 2, and it's a much harder version of the training tutorial. So it's
nice.
like you just like test your skills in Half-Life in this mod, which I think is pretty cool. And like it's challenging too. Like the platforming's really hard, and also you can only hold like weapons at certain times. It'll only let you fire like so. It's kind of like strategy, and you got to figure out these puzzles, which I think is pretty cool. Paranoia. This is one of the games that is completely different from Half-Life. Nothing about Half-Life related to it. They just used the engine. They replaced all the models. You play as a member of the Russian military in what looks like a bunch of zombies and monsters come to fight you in Russia. And it actually apparently was really trying to be accurate about the Russian military. And so it seemed pretty cool. Thought I'd include it. Half-Life Pieces Like Us is a game where you are friends with the aliens of Zen. So they're your allies now. And you have to fight a new monster that comes through. Ooh. Poke 646 and Poke 646 Vendetta. These are pretty ambitious. They look like they were actually built by an actual development studio, and it is trying to make succeeding to make a completely new game with all new art assets. So the only thing they're using is Gold Source. So kind of like that one before, but way more higher budget. And these games are pretty popular. Like I think they're still like actively updating them and patching them to this day. Again, kind of crazy.
Well, that's cool.
Old stuff. In Point of View, you play an alien slave named Zonxt, Xonxt, and you don't only have to survive the aliens attacking you, because you don't know who's friendly on Zen, but also the Marines as well. So everyone's against you, and you're an alien, which is pretty neat. Half-Life Prison, this game is real out there. You're an alien in a secret underground base on Earth that kidnaps humans and experiments on them so you can kind of do some reconnaissance on the invasion of Earth. And you're just the bad guy in this whole thing. So you kind of just like jump in and out of humans' consciousness to control them and do crazy stuff with them. It's kind of a nuts idea for a game. Scientist Slaughter is exactly what it sounds like. It's genuine. Like someone made this toy game where you just murder the scientist NPCs.
Aw, that just sounds sad.
In really gruesome, disgusting ways. Like giant saws and like it's crazy. Sweet Half-Life. It takes place during like Half-Life time period. You play as Gordon McKinley, the Black Mesa warehouse manager. Remember when I said that you're going to play as a lot of different employees? You got to escape Black Mesa alive after the Resonance Cascade, and you also get a race of enemy aliens in this game that are not Zen, but look a lot like Roswell Alien 51 flying saucer aliens, which I thought was kind of a cool addition.
Yeah.
All right, we're down to our last three here. So They Hunger is another horror game developed by Black Widow Games, and it's actually divided into 3 different chapters, which were distributed on the internet like over a span of like 3 years.
I've heard of this one. I think this one's pretty popular.
Yeah, and the current, if you bought the game, or not, I don't know if you really even buy it, but if you get the game now, it includes all 3 chapters. But this one has like a really cool idea. Like you're an author in small town America in the 50s, and then you kind of go to this small town because you're trying to write your new book, and you need like, you know how like I feel like there's a lot of movies and TV shows that start with like, I'm an author and I'm going to this small town to like find myself, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And this book's a lot like that, and the game's a lot like that, but you fight zombies. So there you go.
Sweet.
This mod was also homebrew ported to the Dreamcast as well. Our last 2, this is the one that like kind of stood out to me when I was first looking at this. Like I wanted to play, and I was trying to find copies of it, and I'm sure they're out there. I just missed it. But the USS Dark Star, essentially, this is the movie Alien with Gordon Freeman. So you're on a ship called the USS Dark Star, and you like there's like a head crab bursting out of someone's chest at one point. It's just Alien, but on the Gold Source engine. This mod was also put on Sega Dreamcast, and it was developed by Neil Mankey and his team. And Neil Mankey, I believe, it sounds like he went on to be a game designer too, because they just name him by name. But also, this game was selected by Valve for their presentation at the Half-Life Mod Expo in San Francisco in 1999. This was the first one.
Oh, so a big deal.
Yeah, it's like kind of a big deal. It's like this is like the first mod expo they did after they released Half-Life. They planned on this, and this was like the star of the show was the USS Dark Star, which is really cool, I think. The last single-player mod we're going to talk about today is called Wanted, and this is really cool. This is a Wild West mod where it looks like you're a cowboy running around.
Red Dead.
Yeah, it's essentially like Red Dead, but you're on the Gold Source engine. It's first person, and you also had like Wild West guns. It looked really cool. I don't know if there's like necessarily a strong story to it, or if you're just like jumping into the world, killing stuff, kind of working your way through. Couldn't get a lot of info on that. But again, this game was last updated on May 31st, 2020. So I think people still play it. Yeah. Now, that was our really long single player list. So we're going to get into our list of multiplayer mods, which is much shorter. I only have 3 of these that I could find on that wiki. Battlegrounds. This is actually, and I've never heard of anything like this since that is in the first-person shooter genre, a American Revolutionary War multiplayer first-person shooter.
Whoa.
Yeah. You either play as the British or the Colonial Army, and you choose from different classes. It's like Team Fortress, but in the Revolutionary War. Yeah. Sounds really
That's
cool,
crazy.
Right? I would think it would be
I'd play it. I should check it out.
I would play this game also because having a musket would completely change how first-person shooters work. Like,
if you fire a bullet and then you have to like load it and
and like there's a lot of strategy to it, which is really cool. I think it would be a lot of like, because you know how in other first-person shooters, especially like Halo, there used to be like a tip or whatever in Halo, and other shooters did this too, where they're like, are you out of ammo in your main gun? Switching to your pistols faster than reloading. Like that seems like it would be a big thing with this Battlegrounds game.
Yeah.
You know, if your rifle's out and you don't have like a minute to reload or whatever, or no, not that long, but you better switch to your pistol really quick. You know, it'd be like a lot of strategy to it, which I think would be pretty cool. The next game is called Natural Selection, and this is a really popular mod. It was reviewed by like Penny Arcade and bigger sites when it came out, but this game is first-person combat and real-time strategy mixed together.
Yeah.
It's Marines versus aliens, and then one Marine becomes like a commander, and then they have like a top-down perspective, and you lead the first-person shooter players through the map.
Yeah, I think it was pretty popular at one point. They made a sequel too. That like the sequel is an actual real game.
Oh, nice! I never played or heard of this until now, so that's good that you know something about it. Someone's probably gonna email us and be like, "I can't believe you don't know Natural Selection. What are you doing?" This is the last one I have, and it's pretty popular. It's called Sven Co-op. It's a co-op game where you kind of work against AI enemies with another person, and you solve puzzles and fight the enemies and stuff. Almost all of the maps were user created. There were some original maps that the developers made. But I have the popular maps that people said on like the wiki were like Crystal, the Escape series, and then Osprey. It's super popular. I kind of want to try these out, but we need friends, so I need you to play with me. But
I know. I think you can use Sven co-op to play through the original game too. You can just play through Half-Life co-op.
Oh, that's how you do it? Okay.
Yeah.
Because I was looking at a different mod, so that's cool that you can play the original Half-Life in Sven co-op. There you go. So those are the lesser known mods that I found. It's funny, we breezed through them in like 20 minutes, and I'm like searching for them for hours on end. That's podcasting. So, but now we're going to talk about probably why you're here listening to this episode. And that is the games we all know and love that were once mods, and then Valve picked up and licensed and sold, and arguably are bigger than Half-Life, I could say.
Yeah.
So the first one is Counter-Strike. So
yes,
Counter-Strike is the multiplayer tactical shooter. If you never played it before, you have one side is terrorists, one side is counter-terrorists. There's two different game modes that are played the most that are either demolition or hostages. Demolition, terrorists plant a bomb, counter-terrorists try to stop them, defuse the bomb. Other way around is terrorists have hostages, counter-terrorists try to get the hostages, escort them to the safe zone. That's essentially the way the game works. We'll talk more about that later. But Counter-Strike was developed by Min Gooseman Lay and Jess Cliff in 1999. And it was their mod. Like, they made this mod. So in a really good interview that's by Gamasutra I found, Lay describes how he was in the last semester of college, and he was like started designing Counter-Strike about 20 hours a week in between, because he had like a light class load. So that's kind of what started this. But here's a little blurb from a different article that's done by PC Games N, and this is called The Making of Counter-Strike. If you want to look up this article, just Google The Making of Counter-Strike PC Games N. This is the direct quote. Quote, by 1996, Lay found himself torn between a computer science degree at Simon Fraser University and a penchant for 3D modeling, often siding with the latter. Much of his student life was spent scouring resources online in order to expand his self-taught programming prowess whilst fueling his interest in the same. In 1997, he released his first Quake engine mod named Navy SEALs. In 98, he helped release another A-Team's Actions Quake 2. So he's actually making games using the Quake engine at first.
Yeah, those are pretty big. That mod, the Action Quake, I know is a pretty big mod, I think.
Yeah, Action Quake was a big mod, and Navy SEALs, Lay himself described as super cheesy. I don't think he really was fun. But A-Team's Action Quake was actually the way that Jess Cliff kind of got on board. Cliff met Lay Cliff was a community liaison for Action Quake 2 for the website, like actually doing like essentially community management, running the forums for the website. And contacted Lay because they wanted to be a part of development for Counter-Strike. They just looked at Counter-Strike and were like, this is really cool. I want to be a part of it. And then, so what happened is Lay worked on the 3D modeling and the programming, and Cliff essentially organized the community development of Counter-Strike maps. And as we all know, like that's like the big thing about Counter-Strike. I think people instantly think of Dust. Or Office, or
the
Dust 2.
maps are everything in Counter-Strike, for sure.
Everyone loves the maps. So it definitely, like, you can look at it this way. I think Lay created Counter-Strike as we know it, as far as the gameplay fundamentals, but Cliff was there to make Counter-Strike really, that you couldn't do one without the other. And I think it's great. So they started working on it together. And Valve actually released their system development kit, which will say SDK from now on, for Half-Life about a couple months after they released Half-Life, which actually gave Lay the time to design all the character models for Counter-Strike. So before the SDK was released, Lay was doing all the character modeling. And then once SDK was released, he just put those character models into like the game and programmed it. And he actually programmed the whole game in about a month, which is pretty, which is pretty good.
That's incredible.
Yeah. Lay did the programming, Cliff helped with the maps and all the other stuff. Needless to say, like Counter-Strike was a success, the mod. And then Lay and Cliff actually got the game out in 2 months after that SDK was released. So designing all the art and like the 3D models, programming the game for a month, and then about another month of like testing and like fine tuning, and then they got the game out in 2 months.
Wow.
And Valve actually reached out to through Robin Walker. Robin Walker, if you don't know, is the co-creator of Quake Team Fortress. Ooh, so there you go.
I did not know that. Now I do.
Yeah. So they just kind of talked about Min-Lei's development history and where they wanted to go with their career. And Min even says he didn't really think much of it. He's like, it was just a meeting. It was fun. And then they got an email later from Valve actually saying like, hey, we want to buy Counter-Strike. And more importantly, we want to hire you to work on Counter-Strike. And they both just didn't hesitate. They were just like, yes, like instantly, we want a job. This is great in games and you're going to buy my game. This is a perfect situation.
Yeah, I get to work on what I want to work on and get paid. That sounds fantastic. And you're going to give me the resources to actually make a real game out of this, because I'm sure it wasn't just we're going to hire you to make this game. It was we're going to hire you and give you a team to help you make this game.
Yeah,
that's the dream.
It's the total dream. It's the total package. That's what
and a great move on Valve's part too, because Counter-Strike. I mean, we're still talking about it 20 years later, right? And not just talking about it, but people actively still play Counter-Strike in its various forms it's taken over the years. But like, what an incredible foresight of Valve to have that, to see this mod and that it was going to go somewhere and to like hitch a ride right from the start,
Yeah, and now just think of all the loot boxes they're selling. It's crazy.
Well,
so Lane and Cliff actually started working on the game, and it was kind of a slow build from the mod to the released game. And they had a lot of betas in between when they were with Valve. The first beta came out on June 19th, 1999. It had 4 different maps. The maps were Siege, Mansion, Weapon Depot, and Prison. And I believe Siege is the only one of those maps that actually came out again. I could be wrong about that. Just if I'm wrong, just know I'm sorry and then email me. And they only had 9 weapons that came out in that initial beta. But the next beta update came out just 8 days later. And then they added Desert and the Assault map. And Assault is definitely still a map.
Yes, I love Assault.
I had the warehouse.
That's a hostage rescue map.
Yeah, it's super cool. I love Assault too. So beta 4.0 though had Commander in this. I don't know. It's a role that a player plays.
Like Battlefield?
So you're still a first person shooter. Okay. You're still playing in first person, and you have you can issue radio commands. I think you can ping stuff essentially.
Ooh.
Yeah. So I didn't really get much more about it. I was watching a video on the history of Counter-Strike, and I did not write down who did the video. I did a terrible job at being a video game historian. Please forgive me. But they mentioned the Commander mode, and then I tried to Google some more stuff about it, and I couldn't really find a lot. It wasn't mentioned anywhere. I think because it was a part of a beta and then just let go by Valve. But they experimented with that. Also, a fun fact about Commander: if you play as a terrorist, that's the one way to start with a different pistol is if you're the commander. When this thing was added to the game, it wasn't very popular, so they took it out. But they also experimented with putting in assault, heavy machine gun turrets, and also vehicles from Half-Life into the game. And that was quickly dropped because it just kind of took the whole tactics part out of it. But the coolest thing they put in one of these betas that they took out is they had a map called DE Railroad, and it had a functioning train.
Whoa.
On the map. Which I think is
the train would move through.
Yeah,
the map?
you could. I think the train moved through, and you could jump on it and jump off of it, which I think is really cool and kind of ahead of its time. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
But that was also dropped. So they had a bunch of betas that came out, and eventually the game just fully released. Okay, but they were doing constant updating of the game from 1.0 to 1.6. Okay, and there's kind of a big part of this that and I don't even understand. I am not a part of this argument, and I believe we actually have an email today that talks about this, which is about the difference between 1.5 and 1.6. So I'm not going to get too into it, but they started getting pushback from the community around 1.5. They would make changes in the communities. Why are you changing it? Don't do it. And instead of just fighting it and putting it out there, they decided to respect the community, and they kind of have a hands-off approach after Counter-Strike 1.6. And I think that's a big thing because a lot of people still play 1.6, a decent amount.
Yeah.
In fact, during this very COVID COVID-19 pandemic we're going through about a couple months ago. I had a friend from college message me like, hey, I'm having some friends get together on 1.6 if anyone wants to play. And I was like,
That's
oh, man.
crazy.
Yeah, it's like I missed it. I wasn't available, but I'm like, that's cool that they're like playing it and people are still active on it.
Yeah, and I remember at the time too, there was like a big division. Maybe this division still exists between people who played 1.5 and people who played 1.6, because I think there were some changes that were made between 1.5 and 1.6 people didn't like, but 1.6 was only on Steam, and it used it was like a fully different multiplayer network. Like the whole system was different, and so you'd get this like group of people who are on 1.5, and then the people who played 1.6 on Steam were just a different group, because there was, I mean, remember we talked about this when we talked about Steam, but like people hated Steam when it first came out. They hated the idea that their games could like came through the internet and were like automatically patched. Like that was the thing that like now, of course we want automatic updates, but back then it was like, no, don't make me install anything I don't want to install. And there was a big division there between 1.5 and 1.6 for a long time.
Yeah, actually, I was about to say that 1.6 could only be downloaded through Steam. That was the only way you can get it. And now everything subsequently after that, and there was no more updates, obviously, to like 1.5 or anything afterward, unless you had Steam. So here's what Lay actually says about all this and the community kind of fighting back. Quote, "It wasn't until Counter-Strike 1.6 when everybody, myself, Valve, everyone involved in Counter-Strike, sort of noticed that the community were beginning to become resistant," says Lay. "It became much more difficult to change the core gameplay. I think at that point we realized it become the perfect game and we shouldn't mess with it too much. It was then we realized this was basically Counter-Strike from now on," end quote. So that's kind of where it goes from there. Valve did make other Counter-Strike games on the Gold Source engine. Well, one more game. It was called Counter-Strike Conditions Zero. It had 2 single-player campaigns, Tour of Duty and then Condition Zero Deleted Scenes. I have never played it, but it had like new maps and new textures, etc. I don't think it was super popular. I think people still wanted to play 1.6. And
that's part of why it wasn't super popular. It was basically the same game as 1.6, but I don't think it was compatible. Like if you had Condition Zero, you couldn't play with 1.6 players. And the Tour of Duty single player campaign, it's just bot games. That's all it is. It's just bot games.
Oh.
And then Deleted Scenes is like 2 hours of a like unfinished campaign, because the game was originally, it was Counter-Strike Condition Zero, and it was going to have this really cool campaign, like a Call of Duty style campaign. And then I forget who was making the game at the time. I think it was like Turtle Rock Studios or something. They stopped working on it for whatever reason. There's probably a whole story here we could tell, but and so what they were working on got scrapped and was released later as Deleted Scenes. But Valve was like, whatever, just put Condition Zero out there and it's fine. And it was not great, but it is a Counter-Strike that I've spent a lot of time playing because it came with my ATI Radeon 9600 XT graphics card.
Nice.
So I spent some time playing it, and I was back. I still had dial-up in the early days, like in my early Counter-Strike days around Condition Zero time. So I think I had to play with bots because I wasn't playing online then.
That's fine. Playing with bots ain't bad.
Yeah, but one other thing that's really cool about Counter-Strike, and Valve's done this with a couple other things too, is so they bought the mod team, they let the guy make the mod, whatever. That was great, but they didn't just say like, hey, come, we'll pay you to make this free mod. The mod was still free, but they put it in a box and put it on store shelves too, and that's part of why it got so big, was because now you like back then and still today, but especially back then, like that was how video games were advertised. Like people found out about games by walking to the store, looking at what was on the shelf, looking at the cover, looking at the back of the box and going, yes, I want to play this. And so lots of people saw Counter-Strike and they were like, yes, I want to play this. And so it reached so many more people than other mods would have reached just by being in a box and being put on store shelves. And if you bought Counter-Strike, it ran on its own. If you put the key into Steam, you got all the other Half-Life games.
Nice.
Which is pretty cool too.
Yeah, that's the best part about it. You get all those Half-Life games. A lot of these games are bundled with other things, which is cool. I personally, I didn't play Counter-Strike until Source. That's when I built a computer, and I missed out on the 1.6 days. But I have a lot of fond memories of this game. If you don't know, there's actually in 1.6 there was another game mode that I don't know what the status of it is. If it's still being played, it might be on mod servers. I don't know, because as far as I know, in Source and Global Offensive, which is the next iteration of the game, there's only bomb defusal and hostage rescue, and then they have like team deathmatch, I think, is another.
Yeah.
But there was a game mode called Assassination. Have you heard of this?
Oh yeah, and there's like one person is the VIP, right?
Yeah, and then you got to escort the player to a designated spot before the other team kills you, which I think is pretty cool. I've never played this game mode, but it was in the original Counter-Strike, and I wanted to throw it out there. But I kind of thought we could take some time to tell about our favorite Counter-Strike memories. Specifically, my favorite server when I was in high school was 24/7 Office. I was all about the Office.
Office is a good map. That's a hostage rescue map too, right?
Yeah, it's a hostage rescue. I played that, Dust, and Dust 2, mostly Dust 2, but those were like the big ones I played. I really just Counter-Strike, I realized because Steam records how much time you put in. And as a kid, I thought I played the game for so long. And then I looked at my Counter-Strike source time after like I started doing this, and it's only like 90 hours.
Well, Steam didn't keep track of time for a long time, so you may have been playing back in the day when they weren't keeping track of time.
Oh, so I may have like
I feel
started
like that's
playing.
a relatively new, like maybe within the last 10 years thing they started doing.
Oh,
maybe
so I may have
maybe a little
actually
before
played a
Yeah.
lot of Counter-Strike. And that makes me feel better because I was like, 90 hours? That's it? I feel like I played this game
Yeah,
all the
'cause
time
I
in
gotta
high
look-
school.
Let me see what my condition 0 numbers are. I think it's literally 0 because I only
Yeah,
played that game
because it's condition
before.
0. That's why.
I got him.
There you go. That's a cheesy
yeah,
joke.
I have 4 minutes played on condition 0 on Steam, which is definitely not true. So
4
yeah, I
minutes
think
too many.
Yeah, it's still a good game. It's still 1.6.
Oh, I know.
Just
It's a good
why?
game. Yeah, we're going to talk about the worst Valve game at the end of this, and I'm really excited for it. So, yeah, I mean, there's a lot more we can talk about with Counter-Strike. I am very aware of that. I know some people emailed us saying they were looking forward to this, and
We can do a whole episode on Counter-Strike history, and maybe we should.
Well, my whole thought process was we wait because we are going to do a history of esports series. That's going to happen, and Counter-Strike is going to be a major part of that. And I feel like we're going to talk about it ad nauseum there. So we should probably hold off for now. But Counter-Strike, it's changed the game for it invented the tactical multiplayer shooter as far as I'm concerned. So it's very good and highly recommend. 10 out of 10. So fantastic. Let's talk about another tactical shooter that was once a Half-Life mod, and that is Day of Defeat. So here's the thing. For the life of me, I can't figure out who created the original Day of Defeat mod. Like, I don't know if it was Valve. I don't know if it was a person. No clue. I think it was a group of people that sold the game to Valve. And once again, like Counter-Strike, were subsequently hired by Valve. That's from reading like the very vague things I read and watching the videos I watched. I think that's what happened. In Day of Defeat, you are World War II soldiers in Europe fighting. It's squad-based combat. Originally, there were only 4 classes: support, infantry, sergeant. If I said 4, and this definitely... Oh, it's because support infantry is 1. Sergeant, rifleman, or sniper. Those are the 4 classes. And the cool thing was in the modded version of the game, those characters had a different movement speed from one another, which I think changes things a lot in like a tactical shooter. Because essentially this was like squad-based tactical. You would still respawn, unlike Counter-Strike. But yeah, it was very tactical. Infantry was the fastest, and support infantry was the slowest. So Valve then made Day of Defeat an official Valve mod, and then released it in the 1.0 version on May 2003. And it had a lot of changes. The big change, Activision. Yeah, Activision distributed the retail version of the game, even though it could still be downloaded for free if you owned Half-Life. Much like Counter-Strike, you could download Half-Life for free if you own Counter-Strike. Version 1.1 was notable because this was the first Steam version of the game. So hooray Steam. Back then it was Boo Steam, but now it's definitely hooray Steam. Classes later were added to the game in the non-mod version. Those classes included the Staff Sergeant, Master Sergeant, FG-42 Zweibein. I'm trying to do a little German here. FG-42 Zilnero, or the Machine Gunner, the MG-34 Schütz, the Bazooka, and the Mortar. I don't know why I have to do a really terrible German accent when I attempt those words. It just feels right. So that's what I'm doing. Those all had different weapons they'd start with and everything too. So it kind of just got bigger and bigger. The game actually had also, much like Counter-Strike, a variety of features Valve tried and then pulled because they weren't popular. So initially they had a bleeding mechanic in the game where you had to bandage yourself, which is funny because I feel like in like Battle Royale games now, that's a big part of it, is like the time it takes to heal yourself. But back then, people did not enjoy it.
It took you right out of the action.
Took you right out of it. So you scrapped that. They also had night maps, which sound really cool, but were pretty not played a lot by people. So they pulled those as well, which is funny because I remember I played a lot of Battlefield 4, and when they introduced night maps, people went like excited about it. So it's just like a difference in times, I guess. I think it's probably because like graphically it's harder just to see if it's a night map in an older game. You know, you don't have like shading really well.
Well, and part of the stuff in Battlefield was you had like night vision goggles, and so like there was different like tactical decisions you could make because, oh, this is a night map, so I want to have these kinds of things, and maybe you didn't have as many options in Day of Defeat.
Definitely. And I should mention that I think the one thing we can learn about this whole episode is Valve pulled these things because they weren't popular, and that's why Valve was great and they did it better than anyone else, is they actually listened to their audience at this time. I know a lot of studios do that now, but back then, like, I don't think it was
like a new
common.
thing. Yeah.
Yeah, it was not common. So much like those other games we talked about, like Counter-Strike and another game that we will not talk about today, but not the next game for very obvious reasons, this one will get a Source remake. So we'll talk about that when we get to Half-Life 2. The last game we're going to be talking about today, and I should preface this right now, we are not going to talk about Team Fortress. And that is because Team Fortress was originally a Quake mod, and I feel like I can't talk about it until I do Quake. So I think in 2 weeks I'm going to talk about Quake.
We're taking it back.
We're taking it back. We're bringing it back again.
I love it.
I was looking at it today, and I was like, actually, it was last night when I was doing the research about it. I was like, I feel weird doing it because then I'd have to talk about Quake, but I want to give Quake its own episode. So we're going to do Quake. We'll probably talk about Team Fortress during one of the Quake episodes. I hope that's okay with everyone. I'm skipping it on purpose. Please don't angry email me. Okay. The last game we're going to talk about, though, today is called Ricochet. Have you ever heard of Ricochet, Tyler?
I've heard of it, and that is as far as it goes.
And you probably have it in your Steam library if you bought
I think I do.
The Valve Complete Pack, or really, if you own Half-Life, you probably have this game. This game is kind of a mystery. I couldn't find a lot of information on it. Some of my information that I have may be correct. Some of it may be at the discretion of the YouTube video I watched, which is the only thing I could find was one YouTube video, and their reference was a Steam community forum like guide. That's the only thing I could find. So
wow.
Much like Day of Defeat, there wasn't really a lot of stuff to go off of here. Counter-Strike had easily the most like historical stuff written down, and it was still like that one article I found about the making of Counter-Strike on PC Games N, and then that game Gama Sutra interview, and that was it. But here we go. We're going to talk about Ricochet. So Ricochet is like a Tron style deathmatch game, but it's also like a sport at the same time. So the goal of Ricochet is you are a player on a team. There's another team. You are on these pads. Each pad has arrows on it. And when you go over the arrow, your player jumps to a different pad. And you have discs you can throw. There's 3, and then they recharge slowly over time. If you left click, it throws one disc. If that hits another player on the other team, they get knocked off course or off the platform and they die. Or if they're really good, they fall gracefully to a different platform and they save their life. If you knock them off, that scores a point. If you right click, that throws 3 discs, which now have the power to decapitate your opponent.
Whoa.
And kills them, and you get a point also. So you can either knock them off a disc with 1 disc, or decapitate them if you shoot the 3 disc. But if you shoot the 3 disc, you have no more discs to throw. So it's kind of like a strategy thing, you know? The game is called Ricochet because throughout the maps, there are yellow bars that are always at your throw height because you can only throw them at 1 level. I don't think you can look up or down and throw them. It seems that way. Again, this is where I could be wrong. And if you throw your disc at the yellow bar, it will bounce or ricochet into another bar or another player. The more bars you hit before you hit a player, those each give you a point. So if you hit 2 bars, you get 2 points, and then the third point for the kill on the other player.
Okay.
So I hope this makes sense. I'm really thinking that people are going to like listen to this and be like, what was Mike talking about? We have no idea. So
I kind of want to fire this up pretty soon here. I'm downloading it right now as we speak.
So, well, good luck because there's no one playing this game.
It's going to be me and you, buddy.
There are power-ups in Ricochet, so you can get a freeze disc that when you hit an opponent, it slows them down. A power disc, which makes a single disc, a decapitation disc. So it kind of gives you that power. A triple shot shoots 3 discs for the price of 1. And the fast shot makes your disc you throw go faster, move faster. The strategy with this game comes because you can combine the power-ups. So you could have a fast power shot that decapitates people really quick, or a triple freeze shot that can slow multiple people down. So that's like the strategy. You get points to win. But Ricochet, like I said before, it looks more like a sport. Like, minus the murder. It looks like a sport. You play in this giant void, too. It looks like you're in space playing in this game. It looks very futuristic. One thing I did figure out is this was, and when I say figure out, I mean according to this YouTube video, it says this was an in-house Valve mod. Valve made this. The rumor is that Robin Walker, who I mentioned before of Team Fortress fame, made this game in 3 months to show how easy it is to make a game using the Gold Source engine and Valve's modding tools they released.
Oh, okay. So it's like a proof of concept.
Yeah. So Ricochet was released on November 1st, 2000. Although there are no references to back up that date. It said citation needed when I looked it up. And also, that wasn't a Wikipedia page, by the way. This is the only wiki I could find, which is the Ricochet wiki. Ricochet's own wiki
has its own wiki.
Did not have a release date on it. The only official date we know is that Ricochet was included in Half-Life's version 1.1.1.0 update. That came out on June 12, 2002. Now, the crazy thing about Ricochet, well, one of the many crazy things about Ricochet, this game was ported to OS X and Linux via Steam on August 1st, 2013.
Yeah, that was when I think they ported all of the original Half-Life Gold Source games to OS X and Linux then, just to basically be like, see, we can do it. It's easy.
Oh. Yeah, I'm just wondering why they included this one.
Yeah, I guess maybe it was easy to just
probably
switch for that one too. I don't know.
Because here's the thing about Ricochet is this is unanimously known as Valve's worst game. Even Valve makes fun of themselves. So this is a screenshot from that YouTube video. That YouTube video, by the way, is called Ricochet, a deep look at a shallow game by a user named Kermit the Frog. So that Kermit the Frog reviews it. And there's a screenshot in the text, and this is what the Valve website said. And they were talking about like how Half-Life started their career. So since Half-Life, Valve has released dozens of titles that changed the world. And in parentheses, it says, and one that didn't. And they're specifically talking about Ricochet. If you want to know more about Ricochet, there's the YouTube video, Ricochet, a deep look at a shallow game by Kermit the Frog. And if you want to really deep dive into it, there is Ricochet Master Guide. And this is by Moses, and it's on the Steam community forums. The easiest way to get there is to go to the YouTube video and look in the notes underneath, because he links it in there. I think this game, so no one plays this game. I think it would be really funny if anyone that has a Steam account that listens to this podcast wants to play Ricochet with Tyler and I.
I'll play some Ricochet.
I will play Ricochet with anyone that wants to. I think it'd be really it'd be fun if we can get like a game, because the guy in the video actually said like, this game is not terrible. It just doesn't have a lot of depth to it. It's still like kind of fun if you get like a lot of people in there. He also mentions one thing in the video, and I didn't write this in the notes because I just thought it was funny. He said the real creepy thing about this game is that sometimes people that play the game are clearly new to having Steam, and they don't change their Steam name. So you see like multiple people in the game with the name Player. And it's just really creepy. And I'm like, that makes it even better. But this game seems like something that gets no love, but is still functional. It's on Steam. And I think it would be really fun and just kind of goofy if we got like, I don't know, 6 people to play this game together. So this is my call out to people. If they want to play Ricochet, email us at codexhistorypodcast@gmail.com. I'll set up a Discord or whatever, and then I'll like set up a game and we can all play it together at some time. I think that'd be kind of funny.
Yeah, let's do it.
There's a very good chance we're going to all play it for about 10 minutes and be like, never again. But I think it would be funny.
This is stupid.
Yeah. So anyway, like I said before, Team Fortress is coming. Next time I do episode, we're going to talk about Team Fortress. Maybe I was even thinking that Tyler and I should talk about Quake together. That might be a thing because you played more Quake than I did, for sure.
Not very much, though.
But still more than me, which is none. So, but yeah, Tyler, what you been playing?
This week, been keeping up on my Destiny chores. We're just about powered up enough so that we can take down that prophecy dungeon, which I think is going to be really, really fun. We've made it like a little ways into the dungeon, and we hit a wall where we were definitely just too low power level.
Yeah, that murder room, that rotating murder room.
Yeah, the rotating murder room really, really rotated and murdered us. So
real good.
We got to get back to it. But I think I'm probably comfortably over 1050 now. I would still like to get a couple more powerfuls before we get the band together to roll through it. But yeah, mostly Destiny. Watching Kelly play Last of Us Part 2. We're about 40 hours in, which is very long, but we're getting close to the end, and it's really picking up. I'm loving it.
Nice, dude. That's great. Well, I've been playing Destiny with you, and I bought via the Steam Summer Sale Divinity Original Sin 2 because I've heard from multiple people that it's the best RPG game, and I've only played about an hour and a half so far in the time I had.
We could co-op it.
Oh, yeah, you have it. We should co-op it.
I do have it, yeah.
It apparently is a very long game, like 50 hours if you play
super long.
Fast, but it's probably
and you're supposed to
100.
play it like multiple times with different characters because playstyles are so different.
Which that was really fun when I was a child, and I just don't have time to do that now. That's how I feel, unfortunately, which is a bummer. But yeah, so yeah, I got that game. It's pretty cool. I like that you can really manipulate the environment. It is the closest thing until Baldur's Gate 3 comes out, or if you're playing Baldur's Gate 1 and 2, to playing Dungeons and Dragons in a video game, which I really like Dungeons and Dragons, and I play it once a week, and so I really wanted to experience that. And I think this kind of gets me the itch while I'm on a break here. So
yeah,
it's good.
I want to try out the Dungeon Master mode, like get somebody who's a good D&D Dungeon Master to DM a game of Divinity. You can totally do that. I think that would be really
my
fun.
goodness. Well, I DM, so maybe that could be something I do for fun, and we could have Codex players, listeners, do that.
Yeah, maybe.
Or we play Ricochet. Either one.
Yes.
But yeah, so that's what I've been doing this week. Do you want to get into some? I'll do reviews first. We got some new reviews. Do you want me to do those?
Okay.
So
Sure.
here we go. We got some new reviews here. This came in from Dr. Splendid. Love that name. Amazing podcast. This is the best podcast about gaming in general. The banter, that's a big say. Thank you, Dr. Splendid. The banter between the hosts is genuine and hilarious and flows perfectly with the knowledgeable facts. They haven't listened to this episode where I say I don't know if I'm right or not. They have no ads, which is great in this world of over-commercialization and shows that they are just here to have fun. They bring a lot of great facts about the game, great games to the table. This is the perfect podcast for anyone even remotely interested in gaming. I find myself waiting for Monday because of this podcast. Cheers, Daniel. Thank you, Dr.
Thanks, Daniel.
Daniel Splendid. He's a doctor. That has to be it, right?
Yeah, he's got a degree in
being splendid.
Doctoring.
All right.
Being splendid.
Here we go. Next one. Great commentary and great memories from Riptide48. Riptide's a really cool name. I like that. Thank you guys for all that you do. You guys do a great job and bring up so many memories from my childhood. You do a great job of blending colorful commentary, personal experiences, and hardcore facts. From Virginia. Riptide from Virginia. That's a really good name. I'm into that.
Yeah, that is.
All right, the final review is also 5 stars. It's from David. Okay, this is his full name. So I'm just going to say David because I don't want to say David's full name. I feel that's weird.
David D. Davidson.
Dave Davidson says, Love this podcast. I'm pretty sure it's mostly just two guys reading Wikipedia and being really nice and cute to each other. I mean, you're not entirely wrong. But we do jump out to other sources. I definitely had to this episode because there was nothing. But it's also really sweet and fun and nice to listen to two people talk about something they love so much. And what's not to love about the history of video games? It's really interesting stuff. They're so passionate about it, and hearing that passion in the content is really edifying and beautiful. Lots of solid nostalgia here. I love thinking about the old days and wonder of video games, and I've been inspired to start purchasing old systems and incorporate those games of my past into my current vid library. But really, I think the best part of this podcast is the friendship between the two hosts. It's just so heartwarming. Sometimes I'll be listening to them and get back home from whatever I'm doing, and instead of taking out my AirPods and turning on my PS4 or Wii or Switch or Saturn or Dreamcast or whatever, I'll just keep listening to them chat about those things. That's how much a delight this podcast is. Check it out. Thank you, David. That's so nice to say. So nice to say. So, those were the reviews, but let's do some emails. Is that cool?
All right. Sure. I can read the first email here.
All right.
Got one from Old Man Ryan. It says, "What's up, my dudes? Old Man Ryan here. I'm excited to hear about the Half-Life mod show since I played a lot of competitive CS 1.5. Stopped a little into 1.6 since they ruined the AK and made a lot of silenced M4 sprayers. See, I told you there was a schism here between 1.5 and 1.6 players, and Ryan's on the 1.5 side.
Thank you,
That's
Ryan.
interesting.
This is great. I want to know more about this, Ryan, if you have more info, but you really summed it up there. I think that's good, too. So
Yeah.
Again,
He says also
asking people that do work for us, you know.
He says also a game called World of Warcraft came out, which that
I understand
threw a lot of people. Yeah. And I loved when not playing in matches, chilling out in surf maps in 1.5 and Scouts and Knives only maps. So many late nights playing that game. I have spent a lot of time also on surf maps, especially the Surf Egypt map, which is where you kind of learn how to surf. It took advantage of like this weird physics kind of bug where you could like slide along walls at a certain angle. And so there were maps made around it and you could like launch into the air. It was fun. Anyway.
I never played those, but I played a lot of Scouts and Knives.
Oh yeah. Scouts and Knives too. Those are fun.
I might need to look into some surfing on Counter-Strike.
Yeah. We could load up a Surf Egypt map right after this if you want.
Yeah.
All right. He continues to say, "When you do a Mac episode, I hope you delve into some Apple 1 and 2. I remember my mom bringing home a used Apple 1 monochrome screen with a 5.25-inch floppy drive in addition to the 3.5-inch floppy. Felt awesome getting to practice word munchers at home to impress the kids in first grade at school when it was computer lab time in 1990. Keep up the good work, boys. Still waiting on that Gauntlet episode."
Oh, yes, the Gauntlet.
Thanks, Ryan.
We got to do the Gauntlet episode. Thank you, Ryan. We're going to do it. It's just, I feel like I've gotten in this mood for PC gaming, and I just want to keep talking about it. Because we also got to do MMORPGs, which is another one.
Yeah.
But maybe I can take a break in between PC stuff and throw in a different episode because we'll look into it. We'll see,
Yeah.
But do you want me to read the next email?
Yeah.
I got it. Here we go. This is from TK, I believe. All right. "Thanks for the great podcast. Tommy King." Oh gosh, I just said, well, he said it in the email, right? He knows we're going to read it. Is that okay, Tyler? What do you think?
I think it's okay.
It's okay? All right, here we go. "Thanks for the great podcast. Tommy King checking in from Cranston, Rhode Island. Love you guys." Oh, thanks. "Sounds like I'm one of your many new fans that have found you through the quarantine/lockdown. I finally got totally caught up after listening to a few episodes a week." Wow. Again, that's a lot of us. That's so much of us.
Yeah, wow.
"Your podcast really touches a soft spot in my heart. I'm 40 and was lucky enough to play a lot of the old school PC games with my father, like Flight Simulator." Oh, yeah. He said he loved that one, but I hated it. But yeah, Flight Simulator. Oh, man. That's so cool. "Wolfenstein, Doom, and all those awesome Sierra Quest games like King's Quest, Police Quest, Space Quest, and Leisure Suit Larry." You can get a few episodes out of Sierra, he says. "Can't forget also Commander Keen and a bunch of other shareware and free stuff." It really seems like the golden age, was that time of PC gaming.
Yes.
"I also got an NES for Christmas in '88 and remember hearing my parents sneak Mario sessions late into the night when I was supposed to be sleeping. Ah, the good old days." Those parents just sneaking and stealing your Mario. That's so funny.
Yeah.
Fast forward, my father passed in Y2K. Brother's great man. Let's find a cure for cancer. Agreed. I'm so sorry. I'm sorry to hear it, but and now I have a family of my own. Now I get to spend time with my 6-year-old, still playing Mario games late into the night, and still playing amazing quest games like Breath of the Wild with the next generation. God, Breath of the Wild is so
what
good.
a great game.
It was so cute when my 4-year-old was screaming at the TV, telling Link how to solve a shrine when she figured out the trick to it, even before me or the 6-year-old did. That's great. That's a good memory. Anyways, your podcast has brought back all sorts of wonderful memories from those early PC/NES days that were buried away in the back of my mind, and I just want to say thanks. There's just something special about video games. They're like a continuum, evolving over time, but actually never changing when it comes to, quote, still providing the same exact feelings and emotions somehow. I don't have great memories about some book or show or movie when I watch with my dad, especially as I've relived some book or movie or show with my son, but sitting on the couch, banging away on my controller with my kid transports me right back to the good old days of banging away on the keyboard with my dad. Video games are just a totally different form of entertainment, for me at least, in that regard. So anyways, thank you for all the hard work. What you do is appreciated. You guys are great, both of you. Tommy, thank you so much.
Thank you so
The
much. Yeah,
heartfelt
that's really
email.
nice.
It sounds like you had some great memories with your dad, and that's awesome. And it's fun that you're making those memories now with your kids. It's beautiful.
That's great.
What a nice email.
Yes,
I'm sorry I said
I
your
agree.
last name, but you wrote it in there, so I'm not bleeping it. I hope that's okay. So, you want to read the last email?
Yeah, we got one more from Mo. Hey dudes, Mo here from Florida. I'll keep this short since it seems like your inbox has been getting really popular lately.
It has.
It was really big of you to read that negative review. It reminded me of those videos where Twitter personalities read out loud the mean tweets they get. Hilarious. Hey, criticism is welcomed. I'm cool with it.
I'm definitely the annoying guy. We have to. I think it's me. It has to be me.
I don't know. Sometimes I feel like I don't have anything useful to say. Mo goes on to say, but I did feel compelled to say Spectre Zero is wrong. He needs to pull the rad roach out of his butt. You guys are great. You're both excellent hosts with solid research and quality content, and you make me laugh out loud all the time. Keep up the good work. Also, Space War! Spider Butts. Mo.
Thank you, Mo. That's
Thanks,
very
Mo.
nice of you. We will read the good and the bad, I think. That's kind of
Yeah.
our policy, right? We'll read anything.
We read them all.
Because you
That's
know
right.
what? It's a free podcast. So here we go. Thank you all so much for listening. If you want to email us, you can email us at codexhistorypodcast@gmail.com. We try to read all the emails on the air as they come in. And then you can send us a review if you'd like, negative or positive, on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to us. And also, there was a problem before where we only had our most recent 100 episodes on the feed for a lot of sites, and I fixed it, I believe. So
Good.
If it doesn't work for you still, please email me and let me know, but you should be able to access all 111 episodes. Now, I just noticed that, and I'm so sorry. We hit 100 episodes, and I had no idea. It was crazy. So
Holy moly. Yeah. Wow.
so-
Never thought we'd get that far.
yeah, so it was cutting those off at like whatever the 100 behind was, and I just fixed that. So yeah, hopefully if you wanted to go back and binge and learn about Space War, you could. So anyway, that's going to be it for today. Thank you so much for listening. Tyler, do you want to say bye to everybody?
I do. I have one quick funny thing. I think it's funny.
I'm ready. I'm ready for it.
I just grabbed my Counter-Strike disc that I have off the shelf, and it actually says Half-Life Counter-Strike on the disc, as if it has anything at all to do with Half-Life. It's not in the same universe. I just think that's funny. Anyway.
Like it's Half-Life :
Yeah,
Counter-Strike?
Half-Life : Counter-Strike. It has like the Half-Life logo on it and everything, even though the game itself doesn't have anything to do with
Well, you
Half-Life,
know
at least
what?
story-wise.
That makes a lot of sense because almost all the mods, and I took it out if I felt like it didn't make sense, but even those mods I mentioned that weren't anything to do with Half-Life, some of them still had Half-Life in front of it.
Yeah,
So maybe
I
it
guess
was their way of,
Valve
like-
set the precedent there.
Yeah, nodding to the Gold Source engine to be like, hey, look what we made on the Gold Source engine. I don't know. But yeah, that's very interesting.
maybe.
Look at that, a piece of history on Tyler's shelf.
How about that?
Oh, the more you know. Well, thank
All right,
you.
well.
Thanks for sharing that, Tyler. Do you want to say bye to everybody now?
Yeah, bye everybody.